People have been calling Caitlin Clark the Steph Curry of women's basketball for years. At first, it sounded like a fun comparison. Now it's starting to feel a lot less symbolic and a lot more literal. Because over the last few weeks, something very specific has been happening in the background. Steph Curry's personal shooting coach has been pushing Caitlin Clark content non-stop. Not one random repost, not a casual like, a steady stream. At the same time, Steph has been spotted again in Nike shoes tied to Caitlin branding. Put that together, and a lot of fans are asking the same question. Is Caitlin actually working with the same shooting guru who helped turn Steph into the greatest shooter we've ever seen? That alone would be big. But then Caitlin dropped a comment under one of Steph's post-game interviews that made people sit up even straighter. The clip came from a game where the Hornets had glued someone to Steph all night, face guarding, grabbing, chasing him around like it was their entire job not to let him touch the ball. After the game, Steph was asked if that kind of defense bothered him. He gave a very Steph answer. Part of him hates it because, in his words, it doesn't feel like real basketball, but he also sees it as a sign of respect. If teams are willing to junk up the game just to slow you down, it's because they know how dangerous you are, and it opens shots for everyone else. Down in the comments, among the thousands of fan reactions, one stood out. Caitlin Clark jumped in and basically said, "We want to see Steph hit 12 threes a night. Stop grabbing him." On the surface, it reads like any other fan sticking up for their favorite shooter, but when it comes from Caitlin and it's about that specific thing, the grabbing, the holding, the constant body contact 30 feet from the basket, it hits differently, because that's been the theme of her entire rookie year in the WNBA. Every game she sees that same treatment. Traps the moment she crosses half court, two defenders sprinting to her hip on handoffs, hands on her jersey, forearms riding her off her spots, screens turning into collisions, possession after possession where the only way defenses feel they can survive is by making sure she almost never gets a clean catch. To a point, that's smart strategy. If you're facing the best shooter on the floor, you don't just play her straight up and pray. You adjust, you show help, you send extra bodies. No one's arguing against good scouting or aggressive game plans, but anyone with eyes have seen a lot of it go way past aggressive and straight into, if this was anybody else, that's a foul. The problem is, in the WNBA this year, whistles on the perimeter have been incredibly inconsistent. Over and over, contact that would be called in other contexts is being let go, and it isn't just fans saying it. Steph's comment about it not feeling like real basketball struck a chord because he put into words what a lot of people have been thinking watching Caitlin's games. When the primary way you're allowed to slow down a shooter is by grabbing and face guarding all night, that's not some high-level defensive clinic. That's fear masquerading as toughness. Stephanie White, who is now Caitlin's coach in Indiana, has openly acknowledged that there's too much contact being allowed on the perimeter league-wide. And remember, last season in Connecticut, she was one of the coaches using that physical style against Clark in the pros and against other guards in general. That perspective matters. She's seen both sides. She's used those tactics, and now she's on the sideline watching the product suffer when whistle discipline disappears. Rebecca Lobo on commentary had a whole stretch where it felt like every other possession she was pointing out blows to Caitlin's arms, bumps off the ball, jersey pulls, saying there's a foul, there's another, but the game went on. You don't often hear analysts harp on officiating like that unless it's becoming a pattern. Caitlin herself has been very selective about what she calls out publicly. She mentioned the Kennedy Carter shoulder check because that one was blatant and had nothing to do with a legitimate defensive play. But she hasn't come out and said broadly the way teams guard me isn't basketball. She hasn't framed herself as the victim of some league-wide conspiracy. She's mostly just played through it and taken questions as they come. That's what makes her comment under Steph's clip so interesting. She didn't write a statement, she didn't call a press conference, she just echoed what a generational shooter on the men's side is already saying. She joined his conversation instead of starting her own. To a casual fan, that might look small. To people who've watched how this year unfolded, it's very intentional. She's effectively saying, I know exactly what this feels like, and fans want to see us do what we're great at, not watch us get held 40 feet from the rim. It's a smart way of addressing the issue without turning herself into the main character of the officiating debate. Now layer on everything else that's been happening around her name. Steph Curry has already publicly shown love to her game. He's been seen lacing up her Nike colorway of the Kobe. His longtime shooting coach has started sharing Caitlin clips, breaking down her mechanics, highlighting little details. To anyone who follows trainers and skill work videos, that's a giveaway. Those guys usually don't spam one player unless they're either already working together or about to. It would make all the sense in the world. Caitlin is already the most dangerous shooter in the women's game, just like Steph is on the men's side. They're both smaller guards who extend the floor in ways traditional defenses were never built to handle. They both live at 30 feet and beyond. They both deal with traps, grabs, doubles, and shadow defenders whose only job is to deny them the ball. And they're both at the core of Nike's basketball identity right now. If she's going out to work with his guy, the same voice that's refined Steph's footwork, his shot prep, his stamina, his counters against face guarding, that's the kind of offseason move that turns a young star from dominant into every possession is a nightmare for defenders. Cleaner footwork into her pull-ups, faster release when defenders are on her hip, new ways to get separation without needing a screen, better conditioning built for the kind of attention she gets. She's already hard to guard. Add Curry-level detail to that, and you're talking about a player who might force the league, not just teams, to rethink how the game is officiated. And it's not just on-court development. The way Caitlin is moving off the court shows someone who understands her position in the bigger picture. Take that little social media moment with Indiana's football star Elijah. He posted that his dog is literally named Caitlin Clark. Her reply? That both he and the dog are welcome courtside this season. No hedging about if there is a season. No nervous language around the ongoing collective bargaining discussions. Just a confident, casual assumption that they will be playing basketball and people will be in the building to see it. She knows she has leverage. Everybody does. The spike in attendance, ratings, and merchandise during her rookie year didn't happen by accident. Brands that have ignored the WNBA for decades started calling. National broadcasts suddenly wanted fever games on their schedule. Kids who'd never watched women's basketball before were buying gear, staying up for West Coast games, arguing stat lines. That surge is a huge part of why the Players Association felt strong enough to opt out early and push for a better CBA, and Caitlin is fully aware that if the league isn't on the floor, all that momentum stalls. That's why at a recent USA basketball camp, she talked about this being one of the most important periods in the league's history. She emphasized standing firm on what players need, while also stressing that at the end of the day, they have to be playing games for any of it to matter. That kind of language doesn't come from someone just happy to be here. It comes from someone who understands the math. The WNBA is finally in a growth moment, and she is the main driver of that growth. That gives her real weight in any boardroom conversation, even if she's not sitting at the table personally. Loop it back to officiating. The NBA had its freedom of movement crackdown years ago. They saw that grabbing and wrestling on the perimeter killed pace and ratings, so they changed how the game was called. People can debate if they went too far, but their reasoning was clear. Fans don't show up to watch stars get tackled 30 feet from the basket. They show up to watch those stars do stuff no one else can do. The WNBA is in the opposite spot right now. Its identity has leaned so hard into physical that too often the product looks messy instead of intense. And when Steph Curry, maybe the most entertaining player of his era, says face guarding and grabbing all game isn't real basketball, that's a message the WNBA should hear loudly, not just smile at. Because the exact same thing is happening on the women's side to their most bankable shooter. The Carter hit brought all of that into focus, but honestly, it's been there all year. The league can't keep pretending that letting stars get roughed up endlessly is some kind of badge of honor. It might feel tough in the moment, but long-term it hurts everything. The spectacle, the ratings, the highlights, the argument for bigger contracts. And this is where Caitlin's alignment with Steph really matters. She doesn't need to go on a rant. She doesn't need to call out individual defenders or officials. By echoing Steph's frustration, By backing his position publicly, she's quietly putting pressure on her own league to look in the mirror. Add in the strong chance she's tightening her game with his own shooting coach, and the picture gets even clearer. She's not just working on how to hit shots, she's working on how to keep hitting them when everybody's trying to take her head off. That's on-court preparation and off-court strategy, moving in the same direction. Steph has always backed women's basketball, and he's talked often about wanting better conditions and visibility for the WNBA for the sake of his daughters. Pair that with the fact that Caitlin is already the player most young kids are copying, and the connection becomes almost inevitable. This is the kind of high-profile alliance that can actually help force league-wide changes. If the WNBA is serious about growth, in between expansion talk, higher rights fees, and brand interest, it clearly is. It has to adapt around its stars, not bury them under an unnecessary contact. It has to let the best players show why they're worth the attention, the investments, and the new money coming in. Caitlin Clark, training with Steph Curry's shooting coach, while also co-signing his critique of fake toughness defense, isn't a random off-season blip. It looks like part of a bigger move: sharpen the skill, shape the narrative, and push the game toward a place where real basketball, skill, spacing, shot-making is protected. If that's what's happening behind the scenes, next season she's not just going to be a problem for opposing defenses, she's going to be a catalyst for change in how the league itself is called. The question now is simple: will the WNBA officials adjust in time, or are we going to head into another year where the most exciting parts of the game are being grabbed and held 30 feet from the rim? Let me know how you see it. Do you think she should speak more directly about the officiating, or is this quiet, strategic approach the smarter move? And if she really is working with Curry's coach, how much scarier do you expect her to be next season? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if this gave you something new to think about, and subscribe if you want more breakdowns that actually go beneath the surface of the headlines.